Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I will be explaining Python list, how to create a list, how do we access the values in a list, and how do we slice the values in a list. But before that, please support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit also the notification bell so that you will be notified with all the new videos that I'm going to upload in this channel. And so, what is a Python list? A Python list is a sequence of values. This means that in one variable, we can store multiple values. These values can be of any given type or any type. Okay, so I have here an example of a list. The first example here, line number 1, have 4 values, and these values are all integers. The second example, in line number 2, I have a list here. It's called L2, and it has string values, apple, banana, and grapes. Okay. Now, in example number 3, I have a list here that has different data types. Apple, 100, 5.10, and another list. So in a list, it is possible to have different values with different type. There you go. No? So it can also be an empty one. It is also possible to have a list without values. It's an empty list. And like I said, it can hold the same data type or values that are of the same type. Okay, so also a Python list is a mutable data type. This means that at runtime, a programmer can add a value in a list. It can remove a value in a list, something like that. So meaning to say, it is changeable during runtime. Okay, so that is a Python list. So think of it as something like it's an array, something like that. In other programming language, this may be called as an array, wherein it can hold multiple values. Okay, so the values in a list are called elements or items, or simply values. Okay, so for example, in line number 1, we have a list. It's called L1, and the items there, or there are 4 items there, and the items there are 10, 100, 30, and 25. So these values can also be called elements. Okay, so that is a Python list. Now, how do we create a Python list? Very simply, to create a Python list, all you need to do is to enclose the values in square brackets. As you can see here in line number 1, we have a list. It's called L1. Okay, so it has 4 values, and these values or items or elements are enclosed in square brackets. So L1 is equal to, and then the values, which are inside the square brackets. These values will be separated by a comma. So as you can see here, if you would like to create a list that is empty, which means there is no value, then you can have line number 4 here. I have an example of that. L4 is equal to open and close square bracket, and inside there is nothing in there. So that is a empty list. Whether you put space after comma, it doesn't matter. So as you can see in line number 5, there is no comma. There is no space after comma. So that is just possible. Okay, so this is how we create a list. You can create any number of lists in your program. Now, how do we access this value in a list or the values in a list? Now, each value have or has an index address. For example, here in line number 1, let's say here, our list L1. So the first value here, or the first element here, the address of this is 0. The other one, the next one is 1. The next one is 3. And the next one is 4. Each value is represented by an index address. It's like an array in other programming language. Okay, so the second element or item in a list, let's say for instance 100, the index address of this is 1. And then followed by, 2 and 3. So it will be something like this. Okay, so it's automatically assigned. These index address are automatically assigned every time you create a list with values inside. And so given this index address, it's very easy now to access each of these value. For instance, let's print the value of list 1, the first element. And so you will just say something like this. So L1, open and close curly bracket. Okay, inside the open and close curly bracket will be, let's say, your index address. Let's say 0. Now that means I would like to print the first element in the list. And so therefore, when you run it, you should have something like 10 here. The list can also be accessed at the rear or at the back. If you will access it from the beginning, it should start with 0. But if you will start at the end, it is also possible to use negative values. For instance, the last value is -1. Second to the last value is -2, and so on. So it will become something like this. Okay, so if I would like to access the last value of L1, the last element, I can use 3 or I can use -1. So for example, let's have something like -1. So that simply means I'm trying to access the last value, which is 25 here. So if we will run it, and so we have it 25 there. Okay, so the first print is 10 and the second print is 25. Okay, so it can be accessed at the beginning, that is 0 and so on, or it can be accessed, the values can be accessed, or the elements can be accessed where you will begin at the last, and that will be -1, and then followed by -2 and so on. So this is how you access the values of a list. You can also print the list as a whole, as a list. All you need to do is to print the name of that list. For instance, L1. This means that when you run your program, it will give you the values inside the list. So as you can see here, there you go. 10, 130, and 25 as a list. Okay. Now, we can also insert value in a list. Well, we can insert manually, okay, before runtime or during coding. So we can insert, let's say for instance here, let's say 50. Well, that is manual adding during coding, right? However, you can also add during program execution. So let's say, for instance, okay, so I'm going to, let's have another part of the code. It is becoming a little bit longer. So, okay, so let's have it like this. Okay, so I'm going to insert another value of L1. And so to insert a value inside a list, we can use this append method of the list. So let's say L1.append, let's say 55. Okay, this means this 55 will be added in the end, okay, which is after 50. And so therefore, if we will print now our list, so it will be something like this. So the 55 is there. Okay, so this is how you add. Okay, we can also add a value or item, not specifically at the end. So let's say I would like to add, let's say after 10. So I can say something like this. L1.insert. This time I'm going to use insert, open parenthesis. IDX, let's say the index is, let's say 1. And I'm going to add, let's say 60. This means that it will be in index 1. Let's see. I'm going to run now. So as you can see, we have here 10. This is 0. 60. This is index address 1. So you can insert anywhere you would like to insert a value. All you need to do is to specify the index address where you want the value to be inserted. Okay, so it's something like that. So again, because you have inserted already, so you can just say, if you would like to print that 60, that is possible. So L1, so it's going to be like this. And so it should print the 60 because the 60 is at index address number 1. And so as you can see, it is there. Okay. So you can use the insert to add or to insert a value inside a list. If you will use the append, it will automatically add it at the end of the list. Okay. Let's have another one. Now, how do we remove a value of a list? Okay, a value. So if we would like to remove a value, let's say here, So I'm going to remove the value, let's say LST. Remove. No? So that remove, open parenthesis, and the value itself. Okay, so you will supply the value, not the index address. So let's say, for instance, 100. So I am removing the value 100 from the list L1. There you go. So L1.remove 100. Okay, so very simply, the syntax is the list name that remove and then the value. So therefore, if we will print again the L1, let's print again the L1. So we have 3 prints now. No? So the last print, 100 should not be there. Okay, the last print of the list. And so therefore, as you can see, before it is here, now it's not there anymore. Okay. So that's how we remove a value in a list. And of course, we can remove, if you would like to delete the whole list, it's also possible. All you need to do is to use the del and then the name of the list, which is L1. So if you would like to print L1, it should not be there anymore. So in this case, in this line number 15, the list will be removed, and if you will try to print it, it should have an error. All right, so there you go. Because you're trying to print it again after deleting it, then it's not possible because it's already deleted. Okay, so that's how we use some of the basic method of list: the append, insert, remove. Okay, so it's like that. Now we can also access the values of a list using a loop. Okay, so because here in our example before, let's say here, line number 12, we're trying to access the second element or item or the second value, which is 1, right? And so that is 1 by 1. Okay, just specify the index address. Now, if you would like to get all the values, I would like to get each item. I would like to print each item, or I want to get each item in a list, then I can use also for loop statement. So I'm just going to remark this. Let's create another part of the program so that it will not be long. So here it is. Okay, I would like to access each of the value of L2, our list number 2. Okay, so I can just use the for statement. Let's say for X in L2. L2 is our list. The X, because this is a loop statement, now the X will have a value of each of the value in a list, in the list that I specified. In this case, L2. So every time it goes into the loop, every time it goes back here in line number 9, the value of X changes. So initially, the value of X is apple. When it goes back to the loop, the value of X is banana. And when it goes back to the loop, the value of X is grapes. So every time it goes into the loop, the value of X changes. It depends on the number of times it loop. Okay, so the first loop will be apple. So let's say print X. Let us see if that is what will happen. So we are expecting apple, banana, grapes. So let's see again. There you go. So we have here apple, banana, grapes. So the value of X initially is apple, and then it will print apple in line number 10. And then it will go back to line number 9. The value of X this time is banana, and so on. Alright? So it's something like this. If we will change the L2, let's say I would like to change it with L1. So it's the same thing. So when we run it, there you go. Okay, so we have 10, 130, 25, and 50. Okay, of course, you can do anything now with your X here. So we can test your X here. Okay, so it depends on the given problem now. Okay, so this is just an example of accessing the values or the elements of a list using for statement or the for loop of Python. Okay, of course, we can also use the simple functions such as the len, min, max, and sum. Okay, so for instance, let's have an example of that. I would like to know how many items are there in the list. So let's say I would like to print the number of items in that list. So I'm just going to say len of L1, because the len means length of L1. It means the number of elements or items inside a list. And so therefore, when you run it, I should get 5. There you go. Okay, so that is the len. Of course, you can also use the max or the min. this can only be used for values. No? I mean, if the items in a list are numbers, then we can get the minimum value. Okay, so we can also get the maximum value, meaning the highest value in a list. So let's say I'm going to run it. So as you can see, we have the len, which is 5, and then min L1, so the minimum, which is 10, which is correct. All right, 10, 100, 30, 25, and 50, so the minimum. So the maximum, which is the highest, which is 100, so that is max L1. And of course, we can get the sum. If we would like to get the sum of all the values inside the list, so we can say sum. Right. So as you can see, if you will get the total of this or the sum of these values, it will be 250. So these are examples of functions that can be used for a list. Okay, so these are just minimum. Okay, there are other available functions that we can use with the list. Okay, so that's how it is. Now, also we can have this one here. We can also test. No? We can also test the existence of a value inside a list. Okay, so something like if it is existing there, okay, we can do something about it. Let's say I'm going to print, let's have an example. Of course, I'm going to, okay, let's have it here in the beginning. And then I'm going to remove first this part of the program so that it will not be long. Okay, so let's say, again, let's say 30 in, let's say, L1. Okay, so if you're going to use the in, okay, that simply means it will return true or false if 30 is inside L1 or if it is existing in L1. L1 is our list. Okay, so it's something like that. Okay, so 30 in L1. So it will return true if it is there, false if it is not there. So when we run it, it returns true because 30 is inside L1. Okay, so you can also use this in other data structures, collection data structure in Python, like let's say for example tuple, set, even in dictionary can be used. So we can also use it here in the list. Okay, so it's like that. We can also use the not in if you would like to get a false answer. 30 not in L1. It should return false because it is inside, right? So it's something like this. Of course, with this, you can use conditional statement. Let's say if 30 in L1, then you can do something about it, or you will do something about it. Let's say print. Let's say it's okay. So else print not okay. So something like this. So when we run it, there you go. This is the output. First, line number 9, 30 in L1, it's true. 30 not in L1, it's false. And because 30 in L1 is true, so therefore it will print it's okay. And then it will jump to line 15. Now, there is also what we call slicing. Okay, so it is possible to get a range of values in a list. Okay, so for instance, let's have slicing here. So when we say slicing, as the name implies, slicing, you're getting a value, or or you're getting, let's say in a cake, you're trying to get a piece of slice or a slice of the cake. Okay, so you're trying to get only part of that cake. So same also here in list. You're just trying to get part of that list. Okay, so that's what we call slicing. Or a group of value, you're just trying to get a group of values in a list. So for example, I'm going to print the sliced values. So let's say I'm going to use the L5 or our list number 5. And so open and close there. Okay, so we're going to start with 0, colon, let's say 3. So exactly what do you mean by that? Let's run it. Oops, it should be capital L. Right, sorry about that. Let's run it. There you go. 10, 20, and 30. How that happened? So we will start at 0, and that is 10 here, right? And then followed by 3. It will get up to the third element. Okay, so 10, 20, and 30. Okay, let's have another one. Let's say, just going to copy this. I will start from, let's say 4, let's say up to 9. Let's see how it goes. There you go. 4. So index address number 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 50. And then 9. What do you mean by that? Until the 9th element. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that is the meaning of that. So we have to start from the beginning, 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so you have 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Okay, so that's how it is. Another example, let's say, let's start from 2, then 5. Let's try to run it. So as you can see, 2, element or index number 2. Okay, so 0, 1, 2. So that's 30. And then 5. 1, start from the first value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the values are 30, 40, and 50. Okay. We can also start from, let's say, okay, I will put it in the beginning. Okay, so we can also start from the negative value. Let's say negative 2 to negative 5. Let us see. Now, as you can see, it is empty. How that happened? This means that from the start, you have to specify the end value, all right? The end value going to the right only. If it is going to the left, then it will give you immediately a empty result. Because if you start from negative 2, 1 to here, and then you will get negative 5, or you put negative 5 as our end value, so that will not happen, because it should get only from negative 2, which is 90, going forward to the right. But instead, what you did, or what we did, is we go to the left. That's why it is something like this. So meaning to say, this value, the start value, should always be less, okay, compared to the end value. Okay, so as you can see in our previous example, line number 10, 0 and 3. So the start value should always be less compared to the end value. Okay, if the end value is more than, or is less than, sorry, is less than the start value, then it will give you a negative or empty item. Okay, let's have another example. Okay, so let's say, I'm going to say a 5, and then I'm going to say 3 here. Okay, so this is another example of, as you can see, it's empty. Okay, because the start value should always be less than the end value. Okay, so it's going to be like that. Okay, so let's have another example. Let's say from negative 6 to negative 1 or negative 2. Let's see this one here. So in the beginning, right? So let's say, there you go. And so this is the result. Okay, so negative 6, so that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is negative 6. So it starts at 50. Now, again, just like the positive numbers, if it is positive numbers, no? So this time it is plus 1. Okay, so negative 1, negative 2, plus 1, so up to 80. Okay, so that's how it is. Okay, if you remember what I said, let's say here, here, this one here. All right, the fourth print. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the fourth print. So from 0 to 3, look at the 3 here. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So minus 1, that's 3. Okay? So 10, 20, and 30. So similar also with negative numbers. From negative 6, which is from here, 50, up to negative 2. So 1, 2, plus 1, so positive 3. I mean negative 3, which is 80 actually. Alright? So that's how you perform slicing in Python. Okay, so we just have to be aware of these ending values. Right? Let's have another one. This time let us add step. Okay? So for instance here, I have another example. Let's have it here in the beginning. Print, let's say from 0, let's make it simple first, up to, let's say 8, step 3. So what do you mean by the step? Let's try to run. Oops. Let's have another example, and then this time by using the step. Okay, so I'm going to use the print again, L5, open and close. I'm going to start with 0. I'm going to end at 8 and step, let's say 3. Let's try to run. So as you can see, we start at 0, which is 10, and we will end at 8. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It should be up to 80 only, right? Now, we have step 3. If you don't place step, that means by 1. But here, we have specified 3. So what do you mean by that? So it will skip 3. Okay? So, from 0, we will skip 3. Alright? So, 1, 2, 3. So that's 40. Then 1, 2, 3. So that's 70. Alright? So that's why we came up with 10, 40, and 70. This is how you slice the values of a list using the step. All right, so once again, 0, as you can see here, 0, we will start at 0, so that means 10. Then followed by the number 40. As you can see here, we have here 40. How that happened? Because of the step 3. So 1, 2, 3, so it is 40. All right? And then from the 40, you count again 3 from 40. 1, 2, 3, and the next number is 70. And so we have the 70 here. Okay, so that's how you specify. Let's say another one. Let's start from, let's say 5 up to, let's say 10. Step 2. Let's try to run it again at the beginning. No? So our beginning in output. So it started with 60, 80, and then 100. These are the values that we sliced using starting 5, ending 10, and slice of 2, or step of 2. All right. So how that happened? Again, zero, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 60. All right. And then we have to count 2 again from here. 1, 2. And so that's 80. From here again, 2, 1, 2, and so 100. The next number is 100. So that's how we count it. Others, what they do is like this. It's also possible like that. So from 5, right? So from 5. So 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that is 60. Right? And then step 2. Instead of starting from 60, they will count 2. 1, 2, and so that is 80. Okay? And then another 2, 1, 2. Okay? So wherever you are comfortable, it doesn't matter. So again, like I said, some would start from 60. Okay? Start from 60, 1, 2. So the next number. From 80, 1, 2, and so the next number. So as you can see here, it's 100, 80 and 100. So wherever you are comfortable, that will not be a problem. However, it's the same result that you will get. Okay, so this is what we call slicing in Python using list, or slicing the values of a list. Okay, so you can use negative numbers, or you can use the positive numbers or the positive index address. Okay, just always remember that the start value should always be less than the ending value. Okay, because if it is, the end value is higher, okay, or the starting value is higher than the ending value, it will always give you an empty list. And so I hope you have understand our topic, the list or the Python list. Again, these are only a few of the functions that you can use. Okay, this one here, using a list, a few or some of the method that we can use out of list. Okay, so there are still many out there that you can use. But so far, these are the basic ones, and you can work on what I have discussed with other functions available for list and other methods available for list. So I hope you have understand what I have discussed. And once again, thank you very much for watching this video tutorial, and see you on my next one.